one of you is the monster.
Monster? They're British, you know.
Hello, I'm Chris Denton.
And I'm Paul Monk.
And we are a
very
British horror. I love it when we do it together.
Yeah.
So today's film is actually the very first British horror film with sound. It's the 1933 classic, and I'm stretching a point to use the word classic, The Ghoul, starring Boris Karloff. So I think we'll just say a few words about what this film's actually about. Paul?
Okay, right. Well, essentially it's about, I think he's an archaeologist.
Yes.
And Karloff is an archaeologist, and he's on his deathbed, and he has been working, he's very into Egyptology, and has discovered something called a jewel called the Eternal Light, which is read up on, and found that can give him Anubis can grant him eternal life or some such thing if he offers it to him at the point he dies.
It's a long shot, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
because this film is set in 1930s England, so it's a bit of a long shot.
It's a bit of a stretch, really.
And
the film is basically about it's about lots of things, but it's essentially revolves around this jewel, and and what happens, and it's almost a little bit of a it's kind of part gothic horror and part strange crime caper.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that's because of the production history of the film that it ended up like that.
Yeah.
So, and a word of warning, although this is the very first British horror film with sound in British horror film history, we are going to have spoilers. So if you are interested in seeing this film and don't want the ending given away, probably turn off now, come back when you've seen it.
Yeah.
But for those of you who have already seen it or who really don't care, I'll just say that Karloff, his character dies, and
oh no, really?
But the jewel is then stolen, and he comes back looking from the dead, looking for revenge. Or does he? We'll come back to that.
Yeah. I think it's worth just pointing out the history of the film, not necessarily the film, but the source material.
Yeah.
Apparently, Gaumont British, who are the distributors and producers of the film, and I've probably said that completely wrong and mangled that. Apparently, it comes from, they used a novel by a man called Frank King, again called The Ghoul, and they borrowed the very, very, very bare bones. In fact, probably the title is one of the things they
because the Ghoul is a crime thriller.
Yes,
and it was turned into a play. Yeah,
and essentially there's yes, it's a crime thriller in it. The Ghoul is actually he's a master criminal who goes by the name The Ghoul, and there's some sort of pretend kind of supernatural stuff that goes on later on, and then Scooby-Doo style, it all turns out that it's not really supernatural, and it's this guy all along.
I love Scooby-Doo.
So yes. So they really did sort of obviously got the rights to produce a film on that somehow, and then just took the
meanwhile
barest bones of it.
On the other side of the Atlantic, the Universal horror boom had started first with Bela Lugosi's Dracula, but then with Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Lugosi having somewhat unwisely turned down the role of the creature, a middle-aged British jobbing character actor called Boris Karloff gained the role and became a massive star.
Yeah. So I think by the time this film was released, he'd definitely done Frankenstein. Had he done Bride of Frankenstein then? I can't
No,
remember.
that's later.
But he had done The Mummy.
That's right, and that's obvious.
Which is a bit of an obvious influence on this.
Yeah.
And he'd also done The Old Dark House as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and as I understand it, he came back to Britain to make this film after 24 years in North America. So it was a homecoming for him, and you know,
what a disappointment for him. But we'll get on to
that. But he'd been loaned by Universal over to British government and British government. I mean, no one alive knows
British.
Government British.
GB.
Ah, clever, like Great Britain.
That's their logo. It's a GB.
Government British.
Yeah. Despite them being they're basically a spin-off from their parent company, which was a French company. But then went on to become a separate entity in their own right, and they were a separate entity by the time they did this. Mainly known for distributing and creating. They created and filmed, I think, one of Hitchcock's films. They did 39 Steps, and
that's one of
Hitchcock's films, yes. And he says, looking at his notes, and The Lady Vanishes.
That's 2 Hitchcock films.
Yes.
2 fine Hitchcock films, I have to say.
That was some of the things they did, but they also built super cinemas as well, which were around the time, which had sort of posh organs and things like that in them.
And now almost all bingo halls.
Yes.
And
in fact, one of them which is the State Cinema in Kilburn, was where I used to live for a short time, and that is now a bingo hall.
Yeah, actually.
But it's quite an impressive sort of Art Deco building.
So you used to live in a place which very probably showed this.
Yep.
This film, if it was built before 1933.
Hang on, no, it was built in 1937, so they wouldn't have shown this.
Excellent. So moving swiftly on. Yeah. So I think we've done the plot. Oh, a really good piece of trivia before we launch into the cast. Let's start with the crew, right? So one of the there's like 4 credited writers as well as the original author, but one of the screenwriters was none other than Roland Pertwee, and there are not too many Pertwees in the world, and Roland Pertwee was indeed John Pertwee's dad.
And there's also a Leonard Hines. Would he be Fraser Hines' dad, keeping with the Doctor Who theme? Don't know.
I cannot confirm nor deny that, but I do have the other interesting little snippet of information that with Roland Pertwee as the writer on this film, John Pertwee in The House That Dripped Blood, of course, Amicus horror film, and then Sean Pertwee in Dog Soldiers. You've got 3 generations of the same family, all in major British horror films.
Yeah.
Or obviously Roland Pertwee wasn't in it, but taking a key role in major British horror films. I think that might be unique. I don't know if 3 generations doing it. No, we'll get back to you on that, but I think that probably is the only occasion we will see 3 generations.
Anyway, I've looked up Leonard Hines. He's not related to Fraser Hines.
Fraser Hines, who's not particularly associated with horror.
No.
although very good in Emmerdale.
Yes.
But
apparently, he was a reverend apparently when he wrote this. So there we go.
Well,
only until 1937. I don't know if that's when he died or.
That is interesting actually, because the villain, and this is another spoiler, the villain isn't really Karloff. He's just an idiot in this. We'll get on to that. The villain is Ralph Richardson in his screen debut. So Ralph Richardson, God in Time Bandits. This is his first film.
Is it? I didn't realise it was his first film.
It's his first film, and He plays a lovely, kindly vicar who actually is not a vicar.
No.
He's a criminal. He's a criminal out to steal the jewel. But it's a good.
They refer to him as a parson. I've never quite really understood the distinction between vicars, parsons.
But Leonard Hines would have done, so we can presume
so,
it was.
So maybe the vicar stuff
authentic.
is actually authentic,
or maybe he as a vicar hated parsons and thought they were all criminals, and that's why.
Yeah, maybe.
Sadly, that's lost to history now. But so I think we can call it fact. Let's talk about Karloff now.
Okay.
You would think this film would be full of Karloff.
You would, wouldn't you?
It's not.
No.
He dies. Okay. His one scene where
he's very, very, very good right at the beginning when he's on his deathbed. I mean, he does give it his all.
Curious monobrow makeup.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does a deathbed.
Well, there's obviously a reason for that, which we'll come on to a bit later with when we mention other things to do with his resurrection. He says, doing air quotes.
But yeah, well, at this point he's just very ill with a heart condition, so naturally his eyebrows are out of control.
Well, no, it's very difficult because he was obviously bedridden.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the energy to pluck the eyebrows. And,
I guess that's
or get them waxed or anything like that. So.
Yeah, that's a plausible explanation. Actually, I withdraw my objection to the eyebrows.
Yeah. I mean, you're dying. You don't have time to beautify yourself, do you?
And the stark reality of that in your final moments makes it a really good good scene, and Karloff reveals that something we've already discovered in the opening scene between two minor characters, that he's spent most of his family fortune on this jewel which he wants bandaged to his hand when he's buried, and Karloff also tells us about the crazy theory he's got about coming back to life and putting the jewel in the statue of Anubis' hand.
Yeah.
And if the hand closes, it means that he's going to get eternal life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says all this stuff to his Scottish manservant.
Yeah.
I'm going to shock you now.
Go on in.
In reality, the actor playing the manservant Lang was not Scottish.
Really?
He's just a master of his art. No, I don't know how you say it. Ernest Thesiger?
Yeah.
It's
a very Scottish name.
born and died in London, but whom had an association with James Whale, and is also in The Old Dark House and in Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Is he Bride of Frankenstein? Is he what's his name? The other doctor.
That's
Doctor,
it.
Is it Dr. Pretorius or something?
Yeah, or something. Yes, that's
something
him.
like that.
That's him. Yeah.
I thought it was familiar actually. I'm glad you brought that up because it was bugging me where I'd seen him before.
Well, he's this cast. At first glance, it's lots of people whom you don't know and Boris Karloff, but it's and Ralph Richardson obviously. But this cast is full of surprising people. But then, even though we're much earlier than the great period of British horror and the British science fiction and all that other stuff we like,
yeah.
A lot of these people were still around then.
Yeah.
And definitely had links, even if they're only familial links with people whom we are very familiar with. Anyway, back to Karloff.
Yeah.
Now here's something I bet this struck you as well. When he comes back, as the Ghoul, which he does do after about 20 minutes of other people being on the screen, he doesn't say a word, does he? He lurches about the house, he strangles a few people. Usually, he doesn't kill them.
No,
but he's lumbering, sort of like maybe the Mummy or Frankenstein. I mean, this is the Egyptian stuff shoehorned into this crime thriller is obviously because of the mummy.
Yeah.
But then he's in a kind of very light makeup. I mean, he looks a bit not. It's not like he even looks. He looks unwell. He doesn't even look like he's a decomposed corpse or anything. But he's wandering around.
A few more wrinkles, I think.
Looking annoyed. But obviously he doesn't. Throughout the whole period, which is he has a few scenes, strangles a few people. He doesn't say a word, and I thought immediately of Dracula, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Because I think I certainly credited Jimmy Sangster for being pretty clever in having the introduction with Dracula and then Dracula not saying anything once he's revealed to be the monster. But here it is in The Ghoul, the very first British horror film. So an interesting parallel. I can't say that I think Sangster was influenced by it. This film was lost. He probably hadn't seen it.
No.
But it's the same device.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I have to say this whole opening scene was a little weird in trying to get my head round who everybody was, because you've got Karloff and you've got his manservant, and they were fairly obvious to try and work out, and then there was some sort of doctor character who, again, not necessarily particularly obvious, and then this other old guy who just appears to be rummaging through his stuff.
Who's not introduced, but who is actually Broughton, the family solicitor.
Yeah.
Played by Cedric Hardwicke.
Who is the father of Edward Hardwicke, who played Dr. Watson in the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes TV series.
And whom was around, I think, a lot in this period. And who plays this solicitor in a kind of delightfully shifty way. Yeah.
I mean, he's a very kind of Scrooge-like character.
Yeah.
Very very yes, a bit not nasty, but very. Yeah, no, he is quite nasty and quite mean.
Well, at first you think he might be just gruff with a soft centre, but he's not. He's not. He is in fact after the Ghoul as well.
Yeah.
So
and that then explains why he's rummaging through all of the notebooks and everything.
I have to agree.
But it was
the
very
lack
odd.
of the lack of an introduction.
Yeah, who is this guy?
And then you've got the bizarre first appearance of Ralph Richardson knocking on the door saying, how's the master of the house?
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to die. Oh, okay. Bye then.
Yeah, it was very kind of, what was that for?
Just extra screen time for the vicar character, but it was bizarre. But who we don't introduce during the deathbed scene and then the death and then the burial is the main characters.
Yeah.
Because our hero and heroine are the heirs of Boris Karloff's character, Professor Morland. I guess a nephew and niece, or
they were cousins, I think.
Yeah.
Again, another problem with the film. I think it doesn't easily explain a lot of the characters and who they all are and what their relationship to anyone is.
No, that's right. It doesn't explain, but then so what's happened to the Ghoul is that it's actually been stolen by Lang, the convincingly Scottish family retainer, but not for himself.
No.
He said something about something like it's a mortal sin to rob your heirs or something like that, and he actually steals and we see him praying.
Yeah.
He's a Christian. We can see that. He steals the Jewel just before Broughton gets to it, but he steals the Jewel to pass on to the heirs. And he doesn't actually try to do that.
And he clearly believes all Karloff's reincarnation stuff is clearly just nuts.
He does, but unfortunately, before he can execute his plan to reunite the heirs with their inheritance, Karloff comes back.
Yeah.
And Karloff comes back to life, looks at his hand, there's no jewel, and he's upset.
Did we mention that he'd bandaged the jewel in his hand?
Which is where he was
expecting it to be, and it obviously wasn't there.
And that's the precursor to all the action. I'm gonna call it action.
Okay. Now I was looking at this. I had in my notes that it's where is it? It's 50 minutes before Karloff actually returns into this film. It's an 80-minute film, so
it's quite disappointing.
So there's quite a lot of fairly dull stuff that leads up to that. Okay, let's get on to the Karloff's resurrection. Now, it's the film doesn't really explain this very often. I didn't realise till I read a synopsis of the film afterwards, because I was quite confused about this. That apparently he's had a sort of weird catatonic.
Oh no, this is explained.
Thing is it? Did I just miss that?
Yeah,
that he wasn't actually dead at all.
No, there's a doctor that comes with the police at the end, and the doctor says something like, "The first doctor was incompetent. He wasn't actually dead." So yeah,
okay.
Karloff hasn't come back from the dead. It's revealed.
It's just a doctor who's incapable of knowing when someone's dead.
He was just pronounced dead, and because Karloff's character then wakes up in the tomb, he thinks he's dead and come back.
Yeah.
which quite funny, but also slightly disappointing, and it lurches it back to being a crime thriller with horror overtones.
And from that point on, it's a kind of caper where the jewel goes from one person to another person, and this person and that person. Yeah,
there's a dodgy. I don't really want to talk about this character, but there's a dodgy Arab sheik who's a guy blacked up. Who's also after the jewel, and then there's these two these two relatives played the guy. I forget his name. Hang on. Oh yes, Rafe is brilliant. Rafe Morland is played by Anthony Bushell, whom you were, before we turned on the microphones, slightly disparaging of.
Yes, his acting is. I referred to him as going to the Prentice Hancock School of Acting, which, if you're a TV nerd, you'll know who Prentice Hancock is. But essentially, he acts as if he's sort of shouting everything, and it's all on one level. Which Prentice Hancock does as well in every single thing he's been in ever. And it's a bit distracting. And I do wonder actually if a lot of because again, the two women in it, the comic relief female character kind of gets better, but the two women in it are quite bad as well. And I wonder if it's just that they're used to a more theatrical style of performing, or perhaps whether they're intentionally projecting their voices when they wouldn't actually need to, and that's affecting their performance.
Well, it's quite interesting. It's quite fascinating. Can't think of an adjective I haven't already overused. But Ralph Richardson doesn't do that.
No.
He seems to sort of immediately take to screen acting. He gives quite an understated performance, whereas there is a very theatrical style to some of the others. You would expect that. Talkies at this point are 4 years old.
True.
You wouldn't expect people to quite know what they were doing, especially this film being made in Britain and not in Hollywood, where they were advancing very quickly. And probably the fact that this is a British film does kind of explain why it's got some technical deficiencies that perhaps you don't see in the great Universal films. But I don't want to completely. I mean, this film's okay. It's quite enjoyable. And these two characters, Rafe and she's called Betty.
Yeah.
They're like the classic juvenile leads that you get in Hammer films,
yes,
aren't they?
are.
So this film.
I think with it they want later on, because they don't like each other very much at the beginning. But I think towards the end they want to have a kind of a romantic undertone with them, and then it's almost like they remember they're related. So they kind of reel that in.
It would have worked better if they weren't related to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the writers obviously thought, oh, they should be related because then they're both heirs. But then it's like, but then they can't get together, because there's almost elements of screwball comedy in the kind of snappy dialogue.
Yeah.
Because there are some quite funny lines.
I do have to say that something that Rafe or Ralph or whatever his name is says, which is a nice greeting, which I think we need to reintroduce into everyday life. Which he says when they're going back to I think it's the house, and he wants to get the attraction of the Ralph Richardson's vicar. He shouts out, "Hi there, cocky!"
He does.
And then when he realises he's a vicar, he goes, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't realise you were passing." But I think we need to get "Hi there, cocky" as a new way of a greeting in everyday life. I'm certainly going to start using it from now on.
This is the way we should open every
show.
So
I think we're going to open every future episode with "Hi there, cocky."
No, you've explained it. It won't be weird in future episodes. No, I like that.
So tomorrow when you wake up in the morning and you see your wife, just get up and go, "Hi there, cookie." See what she says. It'll catch on, I'm sure it will.
I'm not sure if you can actually address a woman in that way, but I'll give it a go.
I'm sure it will catch on. I'm going to try it at work tomorrow.
Interesting fact about Anthony Bushell.
Okay.
Colonel Breen in the TV Quatermass in the Pit.
Oh, was that him? Oh, he was a lot better in that.
He's done a lot more acting.
That's true. Plus, I guess he's playing quite a shouty part. So.
Well, apparently he did serve in the army and was a major, so it wasn't a stretch for him to play Colonel. Yeah. And the actress Dorothy Hyson, who played Betty, didn't have a very long career because in cinema, because she married Anthony Quayle and retired to look after the kids.
Oh, okay.
And they stayed married until Sir Anthony's death. She's American as well.
Is she?
Yeah. So her accent's not bad, is it?
No. I mean, I didn't like her at first because I thought, because she's the comedy role and she was quite jarring against everything. And I think one of the first things she says when they go to the house is something like, "Oh, this house hasn't seen a woman for 25 years." Oh. And then blows dust off something and gets it in her face in a kind of comedy.
No,
aren't women also incompetent?
Isn't that Caney, the other Kathleen Harrison's character?
Is it? Oh, I don't know. See, I'm confused. Who's the comic relief?
That's Caney.
Yes. So you're talking about the other one.
Yeah, Dr. Betty, the other heir.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, but Caney, who's Betty's friend, is she's pretty. I don't think we'd put up with her now.
No.
Although she was in a lot of. Kathleen Harrison was in a lot of films.
Okay.
Doing this kind of thing, and she had a really long career as a character actress, but she never appeared in any other horror films.
There's that weird weird scene she has as well with the Arab Egyptian guy.
Yeah.
Where he's talking about how they make coffee in the desert, and he's explained something that's fairly horrific, and that they have these
No, that's quite. They have these half-naked women, and if they don't do
Yeah.
it right, they whip them.
They whip them,
And Kaney's delighted by
and she
this.
loves it. She's going, "Oh yeah, that's great. Oh, I don't want to get this wrong."
I think
And it's this kind of weird flirty scene, and it's a bit like, "Are you not listening to what he's saying?"
well,
It's essentially saying, if you don't get it wrong, he's going to basically whip you.
And then he's sort of all pretend masterful. You know, if his character had been been played by like a real Arabic actor, and whom had been written in a not quite so cliched way, he could have been really good, because that kind of thing could have been developed. It would have been quite, you could see 20 years later Omar Sharif, say, doing a really good job as a strong romantic character, and he doesn't have to be a villain. He's after the he's after the jewel, but he's after it because it's sacred in his faith, or very important culturally. So that character with a slight tweak could be perfectly acceptable to by modern standards, but no, because he turns out to be Ron in the end.
Yeah. No, I mean,
but
it could have been.
That scene hinted at.
He could have been a lot more. He wasn't quite charming enough, I don't think, and he could have been a lot more charming, and could have. It would have made more sense. Yeah. I mean, that scene's there basically because they're doing the coffee, and that's where Lang has hidden the jewel.
It's another example of quite good writing.
It's a nice idea. I think
this film may have collapsed a bit under the weight of having the mummy shoehorned into it, but there was some basically good stuff in there.
Well, somebody's taken that because it's an essential plot point that needs to happen, because it's the jewel's hidden in the coffee. It's the threat of that being uncovered, and what the writers have done, like you said, they've created a nice little character piece around it. Okay, it doesn't quite work because
I'd forgotten the jewels in the coffee, which did, but I was enjoying the stuff anyway.
Yeah, exactly. so it's there because that needs to happen. It needs to be discovered, so Lang can dart in and grab it and try and make off with it. But it's not. And it could have just been that, but they actually make that nice little character bit out of it, which is quite good.
Yeah. So I think as we come to the end of the film, when Karloff, Professor Morland, has the jewel, having, I think, throttled his niece or cousin, or
he doesn't kill anybody.
I think he might kill.
There is one
guy in the
there is, and he's in the woods, and
he doesn't kill Lang. He gets Lang.
There's one thing here I think that the director probably needs to learn from that if you're going to have characters killed outside, it's best not to film it outside when it's a really cold night.
Oh, because of the you can see the breathing.
And the guy who's dead is trying really hard to hold his breath, but every so often a little wisp of.
Well, also you've got Karloff's heavy breathing with the steaming.
Air. I didn't think that was quite so bad.
I really like the look of that.
But then he's supposed to be dead.
Is he not going to realise he's not?
Yeah, maybe.
So it's like, wait a minute.
But it depends on how he views eternal life, whether he views it as a living dead. Presumably, he thinks he's going to come back and be sort of resurrected. So he's probably not.
It actually
his case,
visually works really well.
It was just the person who was dead. It's got the odd wisp of breath.
Yeah,
which probably wasn't good.
So Karloff takes the jewel back to the tomb, puts it in the statue of Anubis's hand, and the hand closes.
No. But before that, there's that really good scene where he's got the knife, and he rips open his shirt, and sort of you think he's going to somehow stab himself or something, but you obviously don't see this, but he obviously carves some hieroglyph on his chest.
I don't know why he did that.
I don't know why he did that, because that wasn't part of the ritual in the beginning. But visually, it's quite a good scene, I think.
Yes, it is, and the director of this film, T. Hayes Hunter, I think that's who it was.
Yep.
American director, but he was worked on a lot of silent pictures, so he was very experienced and very much a visual thinker. So I think you can see some real visual flair.
Yeah.
But possibly messed up some of the character stuff and the dialogue, which was much newer in its stage. But,
I mean, a lot of the scenes where it's just Karloff and he's lurking around and doing that come across really well.
Yeah,
and
they
I
do.
think
I agree.
Karloff it's quite interesting because Karloff wasn't a particularly strong man. He was generally quite meek, but he does come across. He seems to be able to project a physicality beyond his actual stature.
It was part of his appeal.
Yeah,
he's so,
and obviously
he's so lovable, as we see in his later appearances.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But you get the feeling he's quite brutish and very sort of quite strong when he's trying to attack people, although not always successfully.
Yes.
But he comes across as being quite overpowering, and he is only quite a slight man. He's not.
It's a shame there isn't more of him, because when the hand closes over the jewel, he dies again, or for the first time.
Yeah.
Just happy. He thinks. I don't know. He must think eternal life, eternal life, eternal life. Irk.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's another good visual moment when the hand closes over the jewel.
That was actually quite.
Yeah, it was good. Quite effective, wasn't it? But then
the hand goes up the
back
arm
into the statue, and naughty Ralph Richardson goes, "Haha, I've got the jewel."
Yeah.
And then,
now, how did that happen? I mean, again, another little Scooby-Doo moment. But how did that happen? You've got because clearly Carlos built his tomb up over a longish period of time. He's been planning this a long time.
But then we've seen Ralph Richardson at the start, so maybe he's also been planning this for a long time.
Yeah, but then you get the impression that he doesn't ever want to see Ralph Richardson's character. So how would he have got the Anubis statue, cut a hole in it? Again, it's had a fake hand, because it must have had a fake hand which he could then remove.
Yes.
See, it's not thought through.
Well, I think the original Ghoul probably makes sense, but the film obviously doesn't. You're right. But here we go. How about another great standard of British horror? Because the tomb catches fire.
Yay!
Yes. and then there's some excitement because the heroes are stuck in it.
Yeah.
And but it all ends happily.
Do you know what? I was a bit disappointed at that end bit because
they didn't burn to death.
Well, no, they didn't burn to death. I mean, that's fine.
I think Ralph Richardson does, though, doesn't he?
Oh, he does, yeah. No, he doesn't, does he? Or does he get away?
I think that flame mysteriously goes, doesn't it? I didn't understand this, but there's a flame that sort of goes across the floor and seems to cut him off from the exit.
Right, okay.
And then they just go, well.
Yeah.
And they run out.
Because, again, the characters don't do anything. They just the circumstances just lead to the door blowing up, basically, and them getting out. And what I thought would have been really nice is if Karloff had kind of woken up, and I kept thinking this is going to happen. Karloff's going to not be quite dead, and he's going to wake up, and he's going to have enough strength to open the door and let them escape, and that's kind of the redemption bit at the end. But that doesn't happen.
There's just not enough of him.
No, he's just that's it. He was gone.
I think it's disappointing because a Karloff performance. Maybe not as early as this. Maybe he's still in his he's the monster who doesn't speak and who's heavily made up. Maybe he's in that phase of his career, But I think he does have quite a lot to say in the old dark house. I'm sure. But well, actually, that could be a complete lie. I know he plays the butler, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably silent now. I come to think of it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not something.
But he's not. Yeah. But as he gets on in his career, he has more to say, and you get that wonderful, rich voice that he's got, and those lovely performances. And those are the
Definitely. I mean, one last things I watched that he was in was House of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
In which he doesn't play the monster.
So 40s Universal.
He plays another character. He's got a ridiculous name, but he's this kind of mad scientist doctor character, and he's brilliant in it. He's actually really evil, but subtly so. And in a part that could just descend into pantomime, he just reels it in and keeps it very contained and very subtle.
And although not a young man in the Ghoul, he's in his 40s. When we had the great British horror film boom, which is 25 years later, he's still very much active, and he plays quite a full role in. I mean, people think of Cushing and Christopher Lee, and then in America there's Vincent Price. But Boris Karloff made a lot of films in the later period, the period that we like. Well, I certainly like a little bit more. And so he's a great. If you love the Universal horror film, that era, he did a lot of great stuff. And then the things I like, he did a lot as well. Like, the Sorcerers, the Raven. And the film Targets. Was just practically the first thing I saw him in. He's just amazing as this old film star who confronts real life violence. So I always loved Karloff, and I'm sure we'll come to one of those later films.
Almost definitely.
And here's some interesting, or fascinating, or some other adjective trivia. There was another film of this, The Ghoul. But it's not the Peter Cushing, The Ghoul, which is totally unrelated.
Okay.
Because I think in 1974, when Tyburn made that film, this film was lost and unknown. So anyway, they didn't have any copyright problems, and they just called it The Ghoul, and it's totally unrelated. Very good film, totally unrelated to this. But this film, or at least the Ghoul, the novel, was made into another film in 1961. What a carve up! Which is an out and out comedy, and best remembered now for two things. It's got Sid James in it. Everyone loves Sid James. But also the film that the novel was to carve up interweaves, and I love that novel. But I have to say, I only know that because I looked it up, because you wouldn't see you wouldn't see a direct link between those if you. I mean, I looked at the cast of What a Carve Up, and most of the characters are called Broughton, which is the name of the lawyer. So it's obviously some distant relation, but honestly.
So just getting back to something you said a few minutes ago, which was about the film being lost.
Like a Doctor Who episode in the 60s.
It was just basically there were no prints of it at all. Apparently, a copy was found in Czechoslovakia, when it was a communist country, which was apparently in such bad condition that it really wasn't really fit to be properly shown. I mean, there was a guy, wasn't there a guy who found it, who then was this later on?
No, I think
but then there was another copy, I think, when they were closing one of the studios.
Oh, this is later. So
where they was found in a cupboard.
In the 70s and 80s, there was only this Czech copy, which was subtitled in Czech, and which had a very poor quality picture, and the sound was extremely degraded. It did come out. It was released in using that as
it was
as the
1969. It was found.
There we go.
William K. Everson.
So it was eventually commercially released in that state, despite being made in 4:3.
That's it. Yes.
They blocked out the subtitles to make it look like it was
Yeah.
widescreen, and it was in appalling condition. But people were happy to see a Lost Karloff film, and then
in the 1980s,
they
in
found
the film vault at Shepperton.
They found the original
Apparently,
master.
it's door blocked by a stack of wood,
and,
of all things.
And it was in perfect condition.
Yeah.
And yes, it's been properly restored, and there's a network DVD edition of it, which is apparently very good quality indeed.
Yeah.
Sadly, I haven't seen that. I saw it on the YouTube version, which unfortunately was quite heavily compressed. I don't recommend that. I think I recommend, if you are interested in this film, get the network DVD.
Yeah. Now it also says here that the cleaned up later version was aired on Channel 4 in the UK first.
Do you know?
Which is probably where I recorded it.
Because I watched this. I watched it. I didn't realise it was a lost restored classic, but I watched every. I went through a long phase of watching every of these.
I remember watching this, but the film that I saw a few days ago bears no resemblance to the memory of the film that I watched back then. I have more of a memory of Karloff lurking about in the mist, and generally it being a lot creepier, and it actually was. But again, that could be because there's a book by horror author Ramsey Campbell called Altered Image.
Oh, which is a brilliant
book. Which is great, which is about a lost Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi film.
Called The Black Tower or The Tower.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm perhaps, in my head, getting the two mixed up. In some weird way.
Well, that's probably what Ramsey Campbell wants.
Yeah.
Because sadly, this, although it has so many trappings of a horror film, is also not a horror film.
No.
It's a crime thriller.
Yeah.
Really. You mentioned Scooby-Doo, but it's kind of got that. There's a supernatural explanation, and then not really.
Yeah.
At the end. So.
And then it's almost like the whole Karloff character is quite incidental. He's the reason why the jewel's there and why it's come into existence, and when people are aware of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it's almost like right at the end they compress this chase for the jewel into about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
To just round it off, but by that point I'd ceased caring about it.
Well, I think it's about 80 minutes long, and it's a long 80 minutes.
Longer.
Yeah. Although there is a lot to enjoy. There's also a lot to admire, but it's when you get to the Hammer films, they made a real virtue at rattling along at a fantastic pace.
Yeah.
And so the films that copied them all did that too.
Yeah.
Whereas no one thought to do that.
It's obviously still being influenced by theatre again.
Yeah.
I imagine, and that sort of pacing.
Well, of course.
Especially as it's based on a play, so loosely based on a play.
Which was.
I have a theory. I have a theory about Karloff's bit in this, and I reckon you could take out all of Karloff's bits that he's in, edit them down into about half an hour, and I think it would still make sense.
It would probably be a lot better, wouldn't it?
So anyone out there, it's on YouTube. If anyone out there fancies having a go at that, I would love to see that. Karloff's bits taken out, joined together. See if it still makes sense.
Well, because you could make it supernatural. You could take out all the rubbish about it not being supernatural, and it would and all the supporting characters who aren't Karloff largely, and it would be quite good. Yeah, because it
would be a little kind of solo piece with Karloff,
and that would be
some random people that he's strangling. It'd be much better. It would improve it lots.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've been talking for quite a while now, so shall we wrap it up with the final 3 questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Ask away.
So, first question is, did we like it, Chris?
Yes. I know I did like it because it was lovable. It was idiosyncratic. Did I think it was good? That's not another question, is it?
No.
I didn't think it was good.
No.
But I did like it.
Okay. I was kind of quite indifferent to it. There were bits I liked, bits I thought were quite good, but largely I was thinking, come on, get on with it. I mean, 50 minutes till Karloff appears again.
I know, but I can see a good film in there somewhere. That's the thing. I can see it.
Yeah, and I think it was just very confused about what it was meant to be.
Yeah,
and I don't think that helps.
No,
it could have been.
You're right.
It could have been a good little snappy crime caper, but it could also have been quite a good, creepy, sort of mummy-based horror film. But it's neither.
It should have been one.
Anyway, getting back to just quickly. Sorry, just before we ask the other two questions, I did say earlier that the thing with Karloff's eyebrows and why they're done like that, and it was just goes back. It just goes back to the fact that obviously when he's resurrected, as it were, it turns out he's not actually resurrected. So they obviously want to make him look kind of slightly horrific, but because nothing's actually really happened to him, he can't look. They can't suddenly change his appearance completely to be a ghoul. Do you follow? So they can't suddenly make him like more monster-like because he hasn't really died. So they've got to make him look a bit weird to begin with.
And that was how they thought that this would make people think he looks weird. And
incidentally, a ghoul, I did look this up, in sort of Arabic mythology. A ghoul is apparently, I'm reading from a academic paper I found, that says, in brief, the Arabs understood the ghoul to be an ugly female demon that intends to harm travellers and even to kill them in some cases. It has the ability to change its form and become a beautiful woman, to attract men or even to mate with them. The ghoul's description is close to that of a predatory animal that has fangs and cloven feet and combines features of the snake, goat and ass. So, obviously, describes Karloff perfectly.
That's a much better film. That really is a much better film.
So, anyway, right, getting back to the questions after that little diversion. Do you think it holds up today?
I don't think it held up at the time. No, it doesn't, no.
No.
And American audiences didn't like this film.
No, apparently it was reasonably well received in Britain, but yeah, it didn't really take off in the US at all.
Well,
and
you
lastly, do we even need to ask this, was it scary?
No.
No, not at all.
No. And again, I
mean, even the most sort of effective moments were never creepy. I mean, I quite often watch a lot of these old films knowing that they're not going to terrify me outright, but the best ones always have moments where you just get that little tingle where you think, yeah, that's a little bit creepy. And there was nothing in this, nothing at all.
Well, the fact that it's not supernatural and it's not even that horrible. No, it doesn't work as an action film.
No,
it doesn't work as an adventure film. Only really works if you're kind of very tolerant about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, I am extremely tolerant. But I mean, you can see why this didn't kickstart a British horror renaissance, can't you?
No.
This was never going to do that, and so the horror films in this period carried on being basically American, and we had to wait a long time for our own little moment in the sun. Okay, right. So, what film are we going to do on the next episode then? Yeah. Well, we're going to come bang up to date. We're going to go bang up to date, totally modern, by looking at a Victorian set Gothic horror. Yes, but it stars Harry Potter, so the kids will like it. Excellent. And it is? It's The Woman in Black.
brilliant.
The Hammer one. The Hammer one.
Yes. So, looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that too. Yeah. And until next time, I've been Chris Denton.
And I've been Paul Monk. And remember to follow us at all the usual places: Facebook, Twitter, and the blog, which can be found at verybritishhorror.blogspot.co.uk.
Or search for us on Very British Horror on Facebook, and like us, ping me.
Yeah.
What do you do on Facebook these days?
Ping me?
Poke me. No, that's old, isn't it? I don't know. Come and find us.
Yeah. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, where we're at Very Brit Horror. And also you can find us now on iTunes.
Yes.
So you've no excuse for not listening.
Apart from a total lack of interest in British horror. That's quite a good excuse, isn't it?
No.
Oh, no, it's not.
You're
right.
You should still listen even if you hate British horror.
Yeah. And on that controversial note, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.